Hello and welcome back, viewers. We have with us today Ms.Sunity Maharaj discussing the constitutional reform amendments, what has happened in the Senate, amongst a number of other things. Viewers, what I would like to ask, please feel free to call us on 665-6278. Please mute your televisions when you're calling in. We would like to hear from you. If you've got any questions, as we normally do, if you have any contributions, if you agree, if you disagree. And I believe we have a caller on the line. Good evening, caller. Good evening, caller.
And good evening to your guest, Ms. Maharaj.
Good evening.
When you were analyzing the constitutional reform bill, I agreed with most of what you said, and especially the point that it is a statistical impossibility in many ways. Many aspects is really a statistical impossibility, and the recall provision is also a statistical impossibility, because if we look at our past election, we very hardly reach 66%, which is the threshold they need in order to have someone recalled. So really, that is smartmanism, that is dishonesty in the politics. But when Ms. Sunity went into the realm of the PNM being a party, the win alone, lose alone situation, I have some difference with her in the way she analyzed it. In my view, political parties exist to form the government and run the country, but not at all costs. And we have seen what the so-called coming together of parties has done to the country. Every time they came together with a specific objective to defeat the PNM, they have failed the country. I remember on one occasion, I think it was your father who said that the next time we make love, it would be on a UNC bed. And probably this is what is happening here now. The love is being made on a UNC bed, because those that form the coalition in this particular instance, they have all withered and died. They no longer exist. What we have now is a UNC government, not even a UNC-led government, as some have said, but a UNC government. The PNM has always been a national party. Its doors has always been open to all sectors. But of course, Dr. Williams came with the education revolution, and a lot of the churches came against him, and traditionally they have remained that way. And as Ms. Sunity rightfully said, in the Black Power days, a lot of Africans took positions against the PNM, and today they still exist. But it will be foolhardy for the PNM to join with other sectors of the society who have certain interests that doesn't coincide with the PNM vision for the country, and that will be a mechanism for disaster. As I said, in my view,
thank you.
Political parties do not always have to run the country.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your contribution. Before I let Ms. Maharaj respond, I don't think that's what she meant when I could be wrong, and I don't think that's what she meant when she was describing the PNM. And I'm going to let her explain it, perhaps in a different way, so that you would get the gist of what she was saying.
Yeah, I think the first thing I want to respond to is the notion that coalitions are necessarily a messy, dysfunctional thing. It has been messy and dysfunctional in Trinidad. In fact, we really give coalitions a bad name. But I will remind people that in 2010, when the Conservatives and the Liberals decided that they would enter a coalition in order to get into office, they sat down after the election, they hammered out the terms of their association in terms of who will make decisions about foreign policy, domestic policy, who will have to be represented on what grouping and so on. And then they released that agreement to the general public.
That is correct.
Right? We have never approached coalitions in Trinidad in that way. Now, the value of releasing the terms of your association to the public is that when one party or the other begins to scheme on the other, The public knows, not just the party members, but the entire country knows, because this is your government. It may not be your party, but it is your government. What happens in Trinidad is that these coalitions come together purely out of convenience to win the election.
I think that's what the caller was saying, and we agree with
and
that.
And so we have to find, and if the PNM could find a way to enter coalitions that have integrity and respect and are transparent, it may find a way to have coalitions that work. There are clear rules. How do you make decisions? For example, in both coalitions, in the NAR and in the People's Partnership, you bring parties together. Your leaders say, okay, we agree to partner and we will fight this election. And then then you win, and one person becomes prime minister, and then everybody disappears from the equation. She has never gone back. These parties have never met and said, this is our position on the Caribbean Court of Justice, and therefore you are the cabinet is the executive, and we are the political leaders that represent these hundreds of thousands of people, and this is what our members want, and therefore you have to implement policy that we are making. Our system is so upside down, where power runs from the top. Everybody believes that the prime minister says so. They represent the prime minister don't represent them. Mm-hmm. So the political system is a dysfunctional one, and it is throwing up dysfunctional coalition politics that are all about expediency. Now, the point about the PNM and being a national party is that the PNM needs to introspect. Why are the forces of change that are unhappy with the UNC mobilizing outside the UNC, but then they will find some ground and say, okay, the UNC is willing to have us, and fine. Why aren't those forces of change entering the PNM? You cannot say that you're a national party, and over you do not get the people to vote for you in areas that are not traditionally yours. Then something is wrong about your relationship with the electorate. You have to go in there and say, how do I represent you? Tell me. You don't have the answer. You have to go into non-traditional constituencies and find ways of representing people.
And you don't necessarily just have to do it to get into power or go with other people who have different philosophies, principles to you, just to have a certain bedfellow to win because it's shown that doesn't work.
If you represent the whole country, you will be in office.
That's it. We have another call. Good evening, caller. Good evening, caller. Good evening.
Very good evening, ladies.
Good evening, sir. Hello.
I have been hearing the opposition parties brandishing about this coalition government in this country, which has never been successful in no part of the world. And the lady just now, I don't know if it's Ms. Maharaj, was saying that whenever people don't get what they want, they have to go to coalition. We had a coalition for the past 4 years now, and it's the worst thing that we have ever seen in this country, because the fact is, nobody says anything except Mr. Abdullah was man enough. At time, Makandal Daga, who has no seat, said something, I'd like to shut him down. And the Prime Minister, well, I don't think she has all those brains with the schemes that she comes in. She's just led by a cabal, and this is what is happening in this country. And that is a disaster. I don't see why. And people, everything that was done in this country, I can safely say was done by the PNM for progress. And how many times these opposition parties won elections? Quite. So the point is this. I don't see this argument doesn't make sense. I'm not insulting anybody, and I'm just saying from my point of view.
No, absolutely not. We are very, very happy, sir, to have your points of view. Thank you very, very much for your call. I think what we were saying, what Ms. Maharaj was saying, and I will let her, for clarity, just explain again that perhaps the reason why coalition governments in the past and this coalition government in particular has been unsuccessful in representing the people, and because we know so many people in Trinidad and Tobago are unhappy, is because things weren't hashed out in a proper manner before.
Yeah, and that is why Abdullah left the coalition. And because when the MSJ decided to go into a partnership with the UNC and the COP and so on, all they had was something called a Faizabad Accord, which is just a PR statement. But it did not say that the conditions under which we will partner with you is X and Y, Z for the unions, this is what we want for the unions, this is, and so on. And that information is made public so that when the government, when the prime minister or the cabinet does not fulfill those, then you say to the country, they have gone back on their word, the same word I told you and I gave you. So the point I'm making to the gentleman is we have never had coalition politics in Trinidad that is meaningful coalition. It has always been a pick-up side, and people come together just to unseat the PNM, and that is not a good enough reason to stay together, because after you've unseated the PNM, what?
There's still no representation. There's still no representation. I believe that we have another call. Good evening, caller.
Hi, good evening, Mickela and Ms. Maharaj. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you both?
We're very well, thank you.
Right. You know, I heard Ms. Maharaj talking about, people representing people or the government going around. The government have a right to go around and check the people, speak to the people, ask the people what they want, or represent the people in the proper way.
Sure.
I can say this, that we in East Trinidad have no representative to do anything for us or help us in getting anything. We can't be one-sided. We can't be serving Port of Spain to South and all other areas have no proper representation from the government. When the government is winning an election, like last year they win 4 local government election or 5. Right, it's because the people are distressed, the people are fed up, and they cannot get what they want. Not to say they want money or pride, but they want something to be done properly for their community and their areas. And we cannot be serving people one-sided. As the national anthem said, every creed and race find an equal place. We cannot be it. And, talking about the PNM are doing their work. I'm not a PNM, right? But, at least they are trying to do what they have to do. And if they don't like something and they speak about it, she used the word that, they talk about fighting alone and left, right, and center. Right now, if she listens properly, this government is doing the same thing, because when they have a meeting, we'll be them in the north, we'll be them. That is not the way to keep meeting, and they behave so foolish that they are spoiling the reputation of our country. So I don't like it. I will speak out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much, caller. And these are the sentiments that we've been hearing all the way through. I think that was more of a statement than a question. So we'll just go to another caller. Good evening, caller.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, hello, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Can you lower your television, please, dear? Because what will happen is you won't hear us, and we'll have a delay in hearing you. So it'll kind of move things along a little bit smoothly. Can we do that?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm doing that.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, dear. Yes.
Yes, I'm listening to your program this evening here.
Yes.
And I don't want to be biased, but I am 65 years old.
Yes.
Yeah, and since I have been voting in elections and so on, this period here from this present government from 0 and 10 to now is the most developmental programs throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad that I've ever seen.
Sure.
And I'm not talking about PNM or UNC, it was throughout. I've traveled from Matlot
That's okay.
to the south to the east to the West Corridor.
So you think the coalition government is working, and you're entitled to have that point of view. You think that people throughout Trinidad, people are being represented, people have a say in what happens to them, or are you judging it purely on infrastructure, which is roads, bridges, stadiums? Is it we're talking about representation on a different level where people? Are you with me?
And this is not the way I grew up. You want
okay, but besides, okay, sure, no problem. Okay.
And I believe there is representation. Probably people want to see the member of parliament that they do every month, but that is not possible. Or every week, that is not possible.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Sir, thank you so very much for your contribution. It's you don't have to agree with everything.
No, but I think the gentleman raises a very important point.
Yes.
Which is, there's a tremendous amount of infrastructural work going on. And yet, in the context of so much infrastructural work, there's so much dissatisfaction being expressed. And how do you explain that? And I remember when Patrick Manning was building all kinds, constructing all kinds of things. And there is a notion that high state expenditure will stimulate the economy, give people a lot of jobs, and they will see things going on. And yet, why is there so much disquiet? So for some people, you look at the highways and the roads and you say, this government is doing this. Yes. What we need is a country which, when we do not have the money that comes from oil and gas, it can still find a way to feel that it is a nation and is moving forward. It is, what we are getting is all the government that money can buy. And that is not a bad thing, but it does raise the question about campaign finance reform.
And I wanted to ask you briefly, I know we have another caller, but we're going to have to wrap up. And I wanted to ask you, I know you have also been an advocate of this. We've been arguing that reform should include measures that really would ensure greater accountability by the government. Mm-hmm. Campaign finance reform, transparency in governance. And ma'am, could it be that although we're getting all the roads and the bridges and the highway, and Mr. Manning built us the Hyatt Regency and all these things, that people still feel that there's no true accountability?
People want to matter. People want to feel that they are part of a process that is fair and square. You cannot have, in, say, the pre-independence period, where people felt that they were left behind. I was hearing a gentleman on a show last night, I think his name is Blaisdell from Tobago, saying that he was so bright in class in Tobago, but this is before 60s. He would always be kept in the back of the class because he wasn't the right color. And so we have exchanged that, but who are the people being brought to the front? We have not yet created a meritocracy. And so that sense of inequity, of unfairness, of lack of... Yes. Those are things that are important to people. They want to know that this is a country in which people who are trying their best are the ones who get ahead.
Perhaps meritocracy means more to people than having a nice highway, a nice road. Probably that's what means more to people.
Well, we will get a chance to find out, because Manning put it to the test, and he found he built all the houses that he could build. He put up the big buildings, and yet when the country the country simply felt that this was a man who was not listening to them, and they decided it was time to send him home.
Well, we don't have too long to wait again because the election is upon us. I want to say thank you so very, very, very much for taking the time out to come and speak with us, educate us on what's happening in Trinidad and Tobago from your point of view. And I was wondering, could you give us two closing words, a closing statement?
The statement I would make is the absolute importance of local government reform. Too much of our politics is run from the top. The people make up the chairing section of the country. They come in and out to vote people in, and then they're parked up. We need local government reform to organize people from the ground up and meaningful participation so that the culture of the exercise of power, for them to see on a daily basis that what they believe and what they stand for, that it actually translates into action, I think that will feed the process of power upwards. And so that will transform the culture ultimately.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And on that note, viewers, our time is up. I want to say thank you so much to all the callers for your contribution. Thank you so much for viewing, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.